On July 1st, 2024, all 6 seasons of Lost landed back on Netflix in the US, and something strange happened. A show that ended 16 years ago started trending again. New viewers hit the finale, went straight to the internet, and asked the exact same question people asked in 2010. What did I just watch? The explainers came back. The arguments picked up right where they left off, like nobody had ever put them down. So here's what we're doing tonight, and here's what I can promise you'll walk away with. We're going to look at Lost through a lens I've spent the last few years building, something I call the Eden hypothesis, and through 2 very unglamorous pieces of software I wrote, one of which is basically a security checklist, and the other of which is basically a paper trail. Nobody's solving Lost tonight, and we're certainly not claiming the writers had any of this in mind. But by the end, you'll have a pattern you can carry with you. The idea that possibility becomes real only after it passes through a boundary, and one concrete 10-minute test you can run this week on any system in your own life to see whether it has what the island never did. Why should you care if you're not a Lost fan and you're not a programmer? Because you live inside these systems. Every one of us is standing in somebody's garden, playing by rules nobody wrote down for us. Lost just happens to be the most emotionally expensive picture of that situation anybody ever put on television. Quick ground rules. The Eden hypothesis and the backbone framework are mine, so when the crew pokes holes in them tonight, they're poking holes in me, and that's fair. Lily carries the myth. Charlie represents every one of you thinking, mate, it's a TV show. And Dr. Vega keeps us all honest, whether we like it or not. This is a what if, the best kind. Pour something, get comfortable, and let's go back to the island. Chapter 1. The Crash. September 22nd, 2004. Oceanic Flight 815 breaks apart over the Pacific, and 48 strangers wake up on a beach that should not exist. Now, in the Eden hypothesis, I talk about collapse, the moment when a wide-open field of possibility narrows down into one actual, lived outcome. Most of us think of a plane crash as an ending. I want the crew to explore why Lost treats it as the opposite, a rupture that blows a person's life back open. The old world stops reinforcing the old self, and the question the island asks from minute 1 is the question Eden asks. When everything that held you in shape is gone, what can you still become? Here's Lily, Charlie, and Dr. Vega.
Right, so I want to start with the beach because I think we all remember it. That first shot of Jack's eye opening in the bamboo. And what got me, rewatching it, this is a garden. It's lush, it's green, it's outside ordinary time. And every single person who lands in it is carrying a secret. That's not an accident of casting, my loves. That's the oldest story we have. You get placed in the garden, and the garden already knows what you did.
See, you've done it already. 30 seconds in, and we're in Genesis. It's a plane crash, Lil. Terrible thing. Happens in the real world. No serpents required. I covered an air disaster once, early in my career, and I promise you nobody on that hillside was having a mythological experience.
No, and I'd never say they were. But that's rather the point of why Lost works, isn't it? It takes the most brutal, random, modern catastrophe we can imagine, and then it refuses to let it be random. The survivors keep asking, why us? And the show keeps suggesting the answer isn't nothing.
Okay, so let me put some structure under this before we drift into destiny talk. Because Chris's framework actually has a specific word for what you're both circling. The crash is what the Eden papers would call a rupture event. And here's the part I find genuinely interesting as a systems person, not a mystic. Randomness and structure aren't opposites in this story. The crash is stochastic, random passengers, random seating, random survival. But watch what happens next. Every random arrival lands inside a field that immediately starts sorting them. Who can walk? Who can lead? Who the island heals? Who it kills in the first week? That's not chaos. That's random input hitting an active filter.
An active filter. Go on then, translate that for the people at the back with a beer.
Gladly. Think about any system that faces the open internet. Requests arrive randomly. You have no idea who's going to knock. But what happens to each request is anything but random, because it passes through a pipeline. Gates in order. Are you allowed in? Are you asking too often? Are you even speaking the right protocol? Random arrivals, structured outcomes. The crash is the arrival. The island is the pipeline.
And I'd put it the old way. The flood is random, but the ark has rooms. Every myth of catastrophe I've studied for the book has this same shape. The disaster scatters people, and then the sacred place sorts them. The garden, the underworld, the island of the blessed. Chaos at the door, order inside.
All right, I'll give you that the show sorts people. But here's my pushback, and I mean this sincerely. Isn't that just writing? Writers sort characters. That's the job. You two are describing craft and calling it cosmology.
Actually, and I want to be really clear about this because it's the whole ballgame, yes. Nobody at this table is claiming the lost writers read a physics paper that wouldn't be written for another 15 years. Mainstream science doesn't sign off on any of this, and neither do the showrunners. What we're saying is smaller and, I'd argue, more interesting. Certain patterns keep showing up, in myth, in fiction, in software, in how people describe their own lives. Lost is a 60-hour dramatization of one of those patterns. That's a claim about pattern, not about intent. Treat it as a thought experiment.
And the pattern in this chapter is the one that gives me chills, honestly. Because the crash doesn't just strand these people, it strips them. Kate's a fugitive, nobody on the beach knows. Sawyer's a con man, nobody knows. Jack couldn't save his marriage or his father, nobody knows. All the labels burn up in the fuselage, and for one brief moment, every one of them is open again.
Tabula rasa. They literally titled an episode that.
They did. Episode 3, Clean Slate. Except, and this is where the show is smarter than the comfort it offers, the slate isn't clean, is it? The flashbacks start immediately. The past comes with them. It's carried inside.
Right, and that's the honest version of the idea. The island doesn't erase anybody. It reopens them. There's a difference. In the Eden framing, these people arrive as hardened collapses. Jack has collapsed into the fixer, Locke into the victim, Kate into flight. Years of reinforcement, one identity, load-bearing. The crash doesn't delete that. It just removes everything that was propping it up. Think of it like a phase transition. Ice doesn't stop being water when it melts. It becomes water that can take a new shape.
Now that one I actually like, because I've lived it. When I went freelance, walked away from the paper, the byline, the desk, for about 6 months, I had no idea who I was. Nobody was reinforcing Charlie the staff photographer anymore. Scariest and best thing that ever happened to me. Didn't need a smoke monster, mind you.
Oh, but you had one, love. Yours was just the phone not ringing.
That's grim, Lil.
It's the same monster, though. Something that patrols the boundary of the new life and roars at you when you get close to the old one. And can I say, this is why the show landed so hard with people our age especially. Anyone who's been divorced, widowed, made redundant, retired, you know what a rupture event is. You know what it's like to wake up on the beach of a life you didn't choose, with your history smoking behind you.
Which is why the science as metaphor framing matters here. This might be less about physics in a lab, and more about how we imagine transformation. Information theorists would say the crash deletes the old context, but not the old data. Mythologists would say the exile carries Eden inside him. Chris's papers would say collapse can be reopened, but never uncollapsed. Same shape, 3 vocabularies.
All right, so the crash blows the doors open. Everyone's suddenly possible again, whether they like it or not. But possible isn't the same as free, is it? Because the island clearly has opinions about what these people get to become.
Oh, it has more than opinions. It has a list.
It has a list with names on it, written on a cave wall and a lighthouse dial, and most of the names are crossed out. Which is exactly where we're going next. Because the island doesn't just reopen people, it selects them. And the ones it selects, my darlings, are not the whole ones. They're the broken ones. Stay with us.
Chapter 2. In Season 6, we finally learn why these particular people were on that particular plane. Jacob, the island's ancient protector, has been watching them their whole lives. They're candidates, possible replacements for his job. And here's the detail that stopped me cold the first time I mapped it against my own work. Jacob doesn't choose the best people. He chooses the broken ones. In the revised Eden equation, there's an object I call the allowed state set, the menu of what a person or a system can actually become from where it stands, given the structure around it. Not infinite, conditioned. The crew is about to argue over the most uncomfortable idea in this whole episode, that being damaged is what kept these people on the menu. Here's the patio.
So, the candidates. Jack, Kate, Sawyer, Saeed, Hurley, the Quans, Locke. And when you line them up, the pattern is almost cruel. Every one of them arrives shattered in some specific way. Jacob doesn't recruit at the top of the class. He recruits at the site of the wound.
Which, said plainly, is a strange hiring policy. If I'm staffing the most important job in the world, protector of the magic light no less, I'm not shortlisting the bloke who is in a wheelchair screaming at the sky, and the doctor with the drinking problem, and the lottery winner who thinks he's cursed.
Aren't you, though? Here's the thought experiment. And again, mainstream psychology doesn't have a candidate theory. This is us playing with a lens. Ask yourself what disqualifies someone from transformation. It's not damage, it's completion. The person whose life is fully working, fully reinforced, fully sealed, that person has, in Eden terms, a very small allowed state set. Every day that goes well, the walls of who they are get another coat of paint. The broken ones are the only ones whose walls still have doors in them.
Or, as I put it in my notes for the book, the unbroken ones have already become too narrow for the role. The gods of every tradition seem to know this. Look who gets called. Moses is a fugitive with a speech impediment. Odin hangs wounded on the tree. The shaman, in culture after culture, is chosen by the sickness, not despite it. The wound is the door. That idea is older than writing.
And it's also, forgive me, the plot of every underdog film ever made. So I want to be careful we're not just describing screenwriting again. But I'll be honest, there's one thing in the show I can't wave away. The names get crossed out. Kid dies, name crossed out. Someone hardens past the point of return, crossed out. The list shrinks. That's not a feel-good open casting call. That's a narrowing.
Thank you. That's the whole geometry of it. The candidate list is the single cleanest picture of the allowed state idea anywhere in television. Watch what the show does. It does not say anyone can be protector. That would be a greeting card. It does not say one chosen hero was destined from birth. That would be Arthurian. It says, here is a finite set, conditioned by the structure, and the set shrinks as people close down or die. By the finale, you're down to a handful. That's a constrained selection process running in real time for 6 seasons.
And in your world, Vega, in the machines, what's the equivalent? Because I want to keep testing whether this bridge holds weight.
In any well-built system, before anything consequential happens, there's a step where the system asks, given who's asking, given the rules currently in force, what actions are even eligible right now? Not what's possible in the universe, what's on the menu, here, today, for you. In Chris's ASI backbone framework, that eligibility check comes back as an explicit decision. Can this proceed? Yes or no? And for exactly which reasons? The island runs the same check on souls instead of software. The difference, and it matters, we'll spend a whole chapter on it, is that the island never shows anyone the reasons.
And doesn't that just describe life, though? That's what I want our viewers to sit with. Every one of us is walking around inside an allowed state set we didn't write. Your age, your town, your body, your history. They're not a prison, but they're not nothing either. They're a menu. And the great lie we were sold, and I do think our generation especially was sold it, is that the menu is infinite. It never was. The interesting question was always, what's actually on it? From here.
You know what that reminds me of? And here's your nostalgia for the folks our age. Careers advice in the 1970s. You sat down with a teacher who had a folder, an actual cardboard folder of what boys from your street were allowed to become. And I remember looking at that folder and thinking, photography isn't in the folder, and doing it anyway.
But notice what you just said, love. You didn't become anything whatsoever. You became a photographer, which was adjacent to the folder, reachable from where you stood. Camera in your uncle's attic, eye for a picture, cheek to knock on doors. Your rebellion was still on the menu, sweetheart. It was just on the back page.
The back page of the folder. That's genuinely the best plain English summary of structure-condition collapse I've heard. And I've read the actual papers. Some researchers in complexity science talk about the adjacent possible, the set of next steps reachable from the current configuration. Evolution explores it. Innovation explores it. And Lost, on this reading, is about a place that curates it. The island doesn't hand anyone a new self. It adjusts what's adjacent.
All right, but here's the dark side, and I don't want us to skate past it. Jacob curates the menu and never tells anyone they're on it. He touches these people out in the world years before the crash, nudges their lives. No consent, no explanation. If a corporation did that, we'd call it what it is.
We would. And oh, I do love that you're the one who said it, because Charlie, you do realize you'd have been a candidate, don't you? Skeptical enough to be useful, damaged enough to be reopened. You're precisely his type. Jacob would have touched you at that airport years ago, and you'd never have felt a thing.
I'd like to think I'd notice a mysterious immortal touching me at an airport, Lil.
Would you, though? Noticing isn't exactly your gift, dear.
For the record, the man in black could turn into the smoke monster, circle this patio twice, and leave the island entirely before Charlie noticed what's sitting right in front of him. Some allowed state sets, folks, remain tragically unexplored.
Why do I feel like there are two conversations happening and I've only been invited to one of them?
No idea, love. Drink your beer.
Moving on, because Charlie actually teed up the next chapter perfectly with the consent point. If the island selects in secret, there's one place on the island where the selection process becomes visible, repeatable, and brutally concrete. A concrete room, a timer, a button. Every 108 minutes, forever.
The Swan, where Faith got a keyboard.
And where we find out what happens when nobody pushes the button. Stick around.
Chapter 3. Deep in the jungle there's a hatch, and under the hatch there's a station called the Swan, and in the Swan there's a computer, a timer, and a rule. Every 108 minutes someone must type the numbers 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, 42, and press execute. Nobody in the room knows exactly what happens if they don't. They just know they mustn't find out. Now, my day job, so to speak, is writing software templates, and the most boring things I ship are the things I'm proudest of. Rate limiters, health checks, the little guards that fire every few seconds and almost never matter. The Swan button is the most famous dramatization of that kind of guard ever filmed, a failsafe with a human soul inside it. This chapter is about why boring, repeated discipline might be the most underrated form of love there is. And fair warning, this is also where the crew has its biggest fight of the night. Here we go.
I need to open this one because the Swan station is where my two worlds collide, and I've been waiting all episode. Here's the setup, for anyone whose memory of 2006 is hazy. The Dharma Initiative, 1970s science commune, very groovy, very doomed, drilled into a pocket of electromagnetic energy. Bad idea. The workaround, a station where the charge gets discharged manually, on a timer, by a person, every 108 minutes. Now, strip the jungle and the jumpsuits away and tell me what that is.
A bloke in a bunker with a timer.
It's a rate limiter. It's a pressure relief loop with a human in it. Look, in the template work Chris publishes, there's a whole family of these. Health checks that ping every few seconds asking, are you alive? Are you ready? Rate limiting that says, this system can only absorb so much, so often. Centralized error handling, so that when something breaks, it fails coherently instead of screaming. None of it is glamorous. All of it is the difference between a bad Tuesday and a catastrophe. The Swan is that with a cot and a record player.
And with scripture, Because that's what nobody in your world will say out loud, Doctor, so I'll say it. What you've just described is a liturgy. Every 108 minutes, the same numbers, entered the same way, or the world ends. My grandmother had prayers like that, and ancient temples ran on them too. The fire that must not go out, the offering made at dawn. The anthropologists used to sneer, superstition. But look closer, and half those rituals were operational. Keep the granary sealed, rotate the seed, test the well. The ritual was the maintenance schedule, wearing robes.
Right, and now I'm going to do my job, because you two are romanticizing a horror show. Have we forgotten Desmond? 3 years alone in that bunker, injecting himself with mystery vaccine, pushing a button he doesn't understand for a reason nobody will tell him, going quietly mad. That's not liturgy, Lil, and it's not a rate limiter, Vega. It's a hostage situation. When you hide the rules of your precious constraint system, the people inside it don't become monks. They break.
Yeah, no, he's right. And I don't want to actually my way past it, because this is the most important engineering point in the whole episode. The Swan is a well-designed loop with catastrophically bad governance. Think about what Desmond is missing. He can't see the policy. What does the button do? He can't see the evidence. Is the danger real? Locke spends a whole season convinced it's a psychology experiment. And the tragedy is, given the information he has, that's a reasonable hypothesis. He can't see the authority. Who decided this? And are they still alive? All he has is the loop. And a loop without transparency doesn't produce reliability. It produces faith at best and rebellion at worst. And the show gives us both. Locke stops pushing the button. The sky turns purple. The plane gets pulled out of it.
Which is the crack in the liturgy, isn't it? The fire tenders at least knew the story of why the fire mattered. Desmond gets a film strip and a locked door.
And here's what I'd ask everyone at home, because this is where the show stops being fiction for me. Think about your own life. How many buttons are you pushing on faith right now? The backup at work you've never once tested. The pension contribution. The smoke alarm you've not checked since, be honest, the last time the battery screamed at you at 3 in the morning. We are all Desmond. We're all in somebody's bunker, pushing somebody's button, trusting that whoever built the loop knew what they were doing.
Let me step back in for a moment, friends, because Charlie just walked us straight to the promise I made at the top of the show, the concrete test. I'm calling it the button test, and it takes 10 minutes. Step 1. Pick one recurring safeguard your life actually depends on. Your file backup, your smoke detector, the health check on a system you run. 1. Step 2. Set a 10-minute timer and try to answer 3 questions. When did it last actually run? What specifically happens if it fails? And who finds out? Does anyone get told, or does it fail silently? 3 questions, 10 minutes, and score yourself. 3 answers, your Dharma at its best. 0 answers, your Desmond, and the sky may already be turning purple. It's a real measurement, and if you try it, I genuinely love your score in the comments. All right, back to the patio, where I have a feeling somebody's about to confess.
Well, he's not wrong. I'll confess mine right now. The backup of my book manuscript. 4 years of work. I could not tell you when it last ran. I'm going home to check tonight, and I'm slightly frightened.
4 years on ancient myths, guarded by a button you've never tested. There's a word for that, Lil.
Yes, Monday, for most people. And that's rather the comfort and the terror of this chapter, isn't it? The button looks absurd until it fails. That's true of the Swan, it's true of my backup, and it's true of every unglamorous person who keeps every system we love running. The world is held together by people faithfully pushing buttons they didn't design.
And one quick reality check before the handoff, since we've been dancing with real physics vocabulary. Electromagnetic pockets that yank planes out of the sky, not a thing, as far as mainstream science is concerned. The heart of the island is myth, not a model. When we say rate limiter, that's an analogy, not a claim that Dharma was running middleware. What is real is the pattern. Dangerous capacity, plus a recurring guard, plus a human who has to keep showing up. That pattern is everywhere.
So the button works, barely, as long as one exhausted human keeps the faith. Which raises the obvious question: who set this whole thing up? Who decides there'll be a button, a list, a protector, an island? Because somebody's been running this place for 2,000 years, and I have some notes on his management style.
Oh, we all have notes. Next chapter, Jacob and the Man in Black. Or, as I've retitled it in my head, the worst governed system in the history of fiction.
The garden had a landlord, my darlings, and he never once posted the house rules. Don't go anywhere.
Chapter 4. Every system has an architect, and the island's architect is a barefoot immortal named Jacob, who has been protecting the place for roughly 2 millennia, by lying, withholding, nudging, and selecting people who never agreed to be selected. His opposite number, the Man in Black, is a being of smoke and resentment who cannot simply take what he wants, because rules prevent him, so he spends centuries hunting loopholes instead. Now, the second piece of software I mentioned at the top, Accountable Systems Infrastructure Backbone, or ASI Backbone, exists because of one nagging question. Most systems can tell you what happened, but almost none can prove an action was properly evaluated before it happened. Who affirmed it? Under which rules? With whose responsibility attached? Lost, I'd argue, spends 6 seasons dramatizing what life is like inside a system that can't answer those questions. The crew is going to hold a small tribunal. It gets heated. Here's the patio.
So I promised a tribunal, and here's the format. The question before the court: who had the worst architecture on the island? I'll open the case against Dharma. They found an energy source they didn't understand, and their fail-safe plan was a guy. A guy, a timer, and a keyboard. Forever. No automation, no escalation, no plan B except a literal fail-safe key they told almost no one about. That is a manual patch on an infinite problem, and every engineer watching knows exactly how that story ends. Because we've all met that system. Some of us have written that system.
Weak opening, Doctor, because Dharma at least wrote things down. Orientation films, manuals, logo on the shampoo. No, the villain of this piece is management. Jacob, let me read the charges. Recruits candidates by touching them in the street, no consent. Watches them suffer for decades, could intervene, doesn't. Calls it free will when it suits him. Communicates exclusively through riddles, dead people, and a lighthouse. And when Ben, who has given this man his entire life, finally gets an audience and asks, in agony, "What about me?" Jacob's answer is, "What about you?" In any organization on Earth, that man is not a guru. He's the founder who pushes straight to production, documents nothing, and blames the users when it breaks.
Goodness, someone's had a bad editor.
Several. Go on then, defend him.
Oh, I'm not here to defend Jacob, love. I'm here to prosecute someone lonelier. Because for my money, the worst architecture on that island belongs to the Man in Black. And it's not the smoke, it's the isolation. Here is a being who over-collapsed. One betrayal, 2,000 years ago, and he narrowed himself to a single purpose: leave. Everything else burned away. No ties, no loves, no doubts. Desmond survives his madness because he has Penny, his constant. One thread of relation holding his self together across time. The Man in Black cut every thread. He is a system with no external connection left. And a mind like that doesn't stay a mind. It becomes a function. Smoke that scans and kills. That's what's actually frightening about him, my darlings. Not the raw. The emptiness where the relationships were.
And notice, sorry, I have to underline this. Notice that even he obeys constraints. He cannot kill Jacob directly. He cannot kill the candidates directly. The rules hold. So what does he do for 2,000 years? He works the gaps. He can't kill Jacob, but he can find a loophole, manipulate Ben into doing it. He can't kill the candidates, but he can get them to kill each other. And that, right there, is the sharpest systems insight this show ever committed to film. Rules do not stop bad actors. Rules without accountability just teach bad actors where the seams are. Every security person watching is nodding. Loopholes aren't broken rules. Loopholes are the space between the rule and the enforcement.
Which is a genuinely unsettling thought when you look up from the telly. Because that's most institutions I've photographed in 40 years. Plenty of rules, beautiful rules, framed on the wall. And the damage always runs through the gap between what the rules say and what anyone can actually prove was decided.
So let's do the constructive version, because this is where Chris's backbone framework earns its seat at the table, as vocabulary, not as a product pitch. And obviously Chris would say this part better, but he's stuck being the narrator tonight. Ask what accountable governance would have looked like on the island. 4 things. 1, the decision gets made in the open. This action was evaluated against these rules. And here's the explicit yes or no, with reasons attached. 2, consent gets recorded. Before something consequential happens to you, you affirm it, knowingly. What Jack does in the finale, by the way, and we'll get there.
Careful, Doctor. You're 2 bullet points from a sales seminar. If you produce a laminated brochure, I'm walking off this patio.
Fair and noted, because the boundary matters. Nobody's selling anything. The project itself frames this as a spine for decisions, not a brain. And it certainly doesn't prove anything about a TV show. What I'm borrowing is the vocabulary, because it names things the island conspicuously lacks. So, 3, the decision leaves residue. Chris's framework literally calls it audit residue, a durable record that survives the decider. So the next protector isn't reverse engineering the last one's riddles. And 4, responsibility stays with someone, a named someone. The host of the system owns what executes. Now run the show back through that list. Jacob fails 1, 2, and 3 for 2,000 years. And the mythic debt that piles up, Ben's rage, Locke's despair, the man in black himself, that's the interest payment on undocumented decisions.
The interest payment on undocumented decisions. You've just described half the tragedies in mythology, you know. The god who never explains, the oracle who speaks in riddles, the covenant nobody can produce a copy of. Humanity has been filing grievances against opaque management since we could write. Some of the oldest tablets we have are complaints.
And the show knows it, that's the thing. Because look how it ends. Jack takes the job, but he chooses it out loud in front of witnesses, knowing it kills him. First informed consent in 2,000 years of island history. And then Hurley inherits. And what's the first thing gentle, unremarkable Hurley does? He turns to Ben of all people, the most abused instrument of the old regime, and says, "Help me. Do it differently. Run it together."
From priesthood to partnership. That's the reform, isn't it? The island's last governance act is the only transparent one.
And one last reality check, so nobody clips this out of context. We are not claiming the writers were coding a governance framework, and no piece of software proves anything about a television show. The traffic runs the other way. The show illustrates why the software patterns matter. Interpretive lens, thought experiment, the best kind, per management.
So the island finally gets a decent administration in the last 10 minutes of the series. Typical. Which leaves just one mystery standing, and it's the big one. The church. The flash sideways. The ending half the internet still swears ruined the show, and the other half swears redeemed it.
And which I intend to defend with my whole chest, my loves. Because I don't think it's an ending at all. I think it's a homecoming. Bring a tissue for the last chapter. I mean it.
Chapter 5. Let's settle the oldest argument first, because it's still raging in comment sections as we speak. No, they were not dead the whole time. Everything on the island happened. The flash sideways, that strange, softened Los Angeles where the plane never crashed, is something else. A place outside of time where these people, after their separate deaths, whenever they came, find each other again before moving on. In my Eden work, the deepest and least understood idea is what I call return, not rewinding, not innocence restored. Unity after differentiation, coming back together as the people your choices made you, and being recognized anyway. The finale of Lost is, to my eye, the most expensive, most argued about picture of return ever broadcast. The crew gets the last word on it, and Lily gets the first. Here's the patio one more time.
So let me paint the scene for anyone who's forgotten, or anyone lucky enough to still have it ahead of them. In the flash sideways, everyone's living a life that looks like a wish. Jack has a son. Ben is a kindly teacher. And one by one, they bump into each other, and something happens. A touch, a phrase, a face, and they remember. Not learn, remember. Charlie's hand on Claire's, Sun and Jin at the ultrasound, Sawyer and Juliet at the vending machine. Oh, the vending machine, I can't even say it without going. And what breaks me every time is that recognition, not information, is the mechanism. Nobody is argued into remembering. They're loved into it.
And here's where I make my confession, because I've earned my skeptic wages tonight. May of 2010, I watched that finale in a hotel in Jakarta on a dodgy stream between assignments, fully prepared to be furious. Answers. I wanted answers. What was the island? What was the smoke? And instead, they gave me a church and a golden light and Vincent the dog lying down next to a dying man so he wouldn't be alone. And I sat on the end of a hotel bed and cried like a child. And I was angry about crying, which is the most male response imaginable. And I've spent 16 years telling people the ending was a cop-out. It wasn't. I was. That dog got me, and I've never admitted it on the record until now.
16 years. You held that for 16 years, love.
Wasn't ready. Some films take a long while to develop. You taught me that. No, hang on, that's mine. I taught you that.
You did. On the patio 2 years ago, when you showed me the photographs you'd never printed. And I told you then, didn't I? Some things only develop when someone's finally there to see them with you. I'd say the flash sideways is exactly that. A darkroom for souls. Everyone waits in the dark until everyone they need is present. And then, the light.
That's rather better than what I was going to say.
I'm going to give that a full 3 seconds of respectful silence before I ruin it with structure. Okay, 3 seconds. Here's the architecture of the ending, because it genuinely is architecture. Christian Shepherd, a name the writers apparently kept a straight face about for 6 years, tells Jack, there is no now, here. Time in the flash sideways isn't clock time. People who died decades apart arrived together. The index isn't when you died, it's who you're bound to. The sorting key is relationship. And that maps startlingly well onto the relational time reading in Chris's later notes. The idea that the deep index of experience might be the record of relations, not an external tick. Physicists call related moves the problem of time. Some speculate the universe's clock is itself relational. Psychologists would reach for the felt time of memory. And mystics, Lily's people, have said forever that eternity isn't longer time, it's deeper relation. Science, metaphor, myth. Same shape. And I want to be precise. Nobody has instruments for the church at the end of Lost. This might be less about physics in a lab and more about how we imagine what a completed life is for.
Can I ask the naive question then, since it's my job? Why do they have to remember? It's a nice afterlife, the sideways world. Jack's got his boy. Why not just let them keep the wish?
Because the wish is a smaller life than the one they lived, love. That's the whole teaching. And it's why I said this ending is a homecoming and not an escape. The sideways world edits out the island, edits out the suffering, yes, but with it every real thing the suffering made. Sawyer without Juliet's death is Sawyer without Juliet. And when they remember, notice, nobody remembers the crash first. They remember each other. The show is saying the realest thing about you is not what happened to you. It's who happened to you.
Which is, and I say this as the resident cynic, a claim I can't even snark at, because the whole series was secretly rigged to prove it. Remember what the producers always said? Characters first, mythology second. The mystery box was the bait. The relationships were the show. Even the finale's structure is a recognition loop. Stimulus, memory, embrace, repeat 11 times until the room is full.
The room is full. That's Eden's return if I've understood our host's papers at all. And I like to think after all these evenings I have. You don't go back to the garden as the innocent who left. The gate east of Eden stays shut in every tradition, and the flaming sword means it. You go forward, all the way around the whole broken world, and you arrive at a garden on the far side, carrying everything together. Unity after differentiation. The garden ahead, not the garden behind.
And they leave together. That's the detail for me. Now I've stopped pretending to hate it. Jack's father opens the doors, and it's not a solo ascension, is it? No lone hero walking into the light. It's a departure lounge. They waited. Nobody moves on until everybody's there.
Even the show's worst governed souls get seats. Notice. Ben stays outside, not exiled. Invited, he says, I still have things to work out. Self-assessed. First honest audit of his life, conducted voluntarily on a church porch. If the man had done that 40 years earlier, we'd have had a much shorter show.
And a much poorer one. The long way round was the point, my darlings. It always is.
All right, send it home, Chris. And someone check on the viewers. We did warn them about the tissues.
So let's walk the whole island one last time, because we covered a lot of ground tonight. We started with the crash, a random rupture that blows 48 lives back open, and the first hint that randomness landing inside structure isn't chaos, it's a beginning. Then the candidates, Jacob's list of broken people, and the uncomfortable ancient idea that damage is what keeps you on the menu, that the wound is the door, that transformation shops on the back page of the folder. Then down into the Swan, where Faith got a keyboard, the button as rate limiter, as liturgy, as hostage situation, all three at once, because a fail-safe loop without transparency saves the world and breaks its keeper. That's where I gave you the button test, and I meant it. One safeguard you depend on, 10 minutes, 3 questions. When did it last run? What happens if it fails? Who finds out? If you run it, drop your score in the comments. I'll be reading them, and I'll confess my own score there too. Then the tribunal, Jacob, the man in black, and 2,000 years of undocumented decisions, where we watched loopholes grow in the gap between rules and accountability, and watched the island's only clean governance happen in its final minutes. Consent spoken out loud, and a gentler steward who asked his old enemy for help. And finally, the church. Return. Not the garden behind us, the garden ahead, reached the long way round, where the index of a life turns out to be who you're bound to, and nobody moves on alone. One pattern under all 5 chapters. Possibility becomes real only after passing through a boundary, and boundaries are only trustworthy when someone's accountable for them. That's the lens. Not proof, not the writer's intent, not settled science, a way of seeing, offered on a patio, between friends. Whether it holds up is your call, and honestly, your call is the part I most want to hear. So, was the island a garden, a prison, a test, or a badly run system? Or all 4, depending on the season? Tell us in the comments. And if tonight gave you something to chew on, it genuinely helps the patio grow when you like this video, share it with the friend you argued with about the finale in 2010, and subscribe. You can find Jackdaw Patio on YouTube for the video, on Substack for the video plus the full research pack behind this episode, on Reddit where the discussion threads live, on X for clips and conversation, and on Spotify if you'd rather have us in your ears on a long drive. This episode was made for a long drive. From Lily, from Charlie, from Dr. Vega, from Anne behind the scenes, who, I should tell you, is the one who said, you have to do Lost. So this entire evening is her fault. And from me, the patio light's always on. We have to go back, friends. We always do. Good night.